got some rest. Some of us did, some of us didn't. We did a radio interview last night with Jeff Renz, 2 hours, wasn't it, Noe?
Yes, sir.
I think we did about a 2-hour interview last night. A lot of fun, able to share a little information with several million people across the world. I'm glad to see some of you here that were here yesterday. I met some of you and had a good visit with some of you. I also want to thank Brad and Noe and everybody that was involved with putting the Border Zone conference together. It's always hard to put a first conference together, but I think that this has the potential to be a really good conference in the future. Stanton and I both, and Noe and Ruben, do quite a few conferences, and this could build up to be as good as any that I've seen. You're not clicking, Noe.
Just 1 second, yeah. I'll take care of it.
There it was. Thank you. For a base that didn't officially exist, and in fact denied by our government for many years, Area 51 has been referred to by many names during that time. Some of those names included Groom Lake, the official description, Dreamland, Paradise Ranch, Watertown Strip, The Box, and the Pig Farm, and several others. Area 51 is the most common name used today and is derived from the area's designation when it was part of the Nevada test site. Consequently, many people do not know where the base is located or how or when the base came into existence in the Nevada desert, some 85 miles northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada. There are several places on here I'm going to mention later in the lecture. This big area is known as Area 51. This is the dry lake bed and where the base is located. Alamo is down here. This is the extraterrestrial highway that runs up through Nevada. There's 2 mountains here, and there used to be 2 mountains here that you could see the base from. I'll talk about those. But this whole area is a restricted zone. This is called S4. That's south of the base. I'll talk about it. And then there's the town of Rachel, which is the closest town to the base. Most people believe it was established as a military base, when in fact it was originally opened by the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. President Truman, through the National Security Act in 1947, set up both the National Security Council and the Central Intelligence Agency. In 1949, the CIA Act was passed and stipulated that not only would the CIA activities be classified, but that its budget would also be classified as it still is today. The United States government could also deny any responsibility for the CIA's activities should they be exposed. It's hard to confirm the myths and rumors about Area 51 since hardly anyone speaks on the record about what actually has or is taking place there. A few have come forward over the years willing to speak, however that number is very few. After World War II, the United States was very concerned about whether the Soviet Union had developed an atomic bomb. One way to find out if they had would be to overfly the Soviet Union in a high-altitude aircraft equipped with cameras. Lockheed Aircraft's Kelly Johnson designed such an aircraft and went directly to the CIA with it. Normally such an aircraft would have been flown at Edwards Air Force Base in California. But with the secrecy required for such a top-secret project as this, it was decided to look for a more secure location somewhere in the southwest, away from the public view. A dozen sites were looked at before deciding in Groom Lake, Nevada. This area, which was previously controlled by the Atomic Energy Commission for testing weapons, was expanded to include Groom Lake, and by July 1955, the CIA had its secret base. A fake construction firm, CLJ, was formed to oversee the construction of the base, mostly done by subcontractors in total secrecy, to build hangars, a runway, ramps, control tower, mess hall, and other required structures. Executive Order 10633 was signed by then President Eisenhower in August 1955, restricting the airspace above Groom Lake for the first time. The restricted rectangular airspace measured 5 by 9 nautical miles. The airplane designed by Johnson to be tested at Groom Lake facility was known as the Actacone by the CIA and as Angel by Lockheed. The first prototype was called Article 341 and flown to Groom Lake in a transport plane on July 24, 1955. Eventually, that aircraft became known as the U-2. The thing to remember about the inception of Area 51 is that it was not originally an Air Force base, but rather that Lockheed and the CIA were in charge, not the military. Pilots for the U-2s were recruited from F-84 pilots with top-secret clearances from Strategic Air Command bases. If they became U-2 pilots, they resigned from the Air Force and became CIA employees. The first U-2 mission over the Soviet Union took place on July 4, 1956. 4 years later, on May 1, 1960, on the same day that Francis Gary Powers was shot down by a Soviet missile, the first American spy satellite film was retrieved, which showed more information about the Soviet Union than all the previous U-2 flights combined. Satellites, however, did not put an end to the aircraft being developed and then test flown at Area 51. While I'm speaking of spy planes, let me share a little known fact with you about aerial observation overflights, which is an agreement among several countries known as the Open Skies Treaty, signed in Helsinki, Finland in March 24, 1992. The treaty allows the United States to overfly other countries that signed the agreement. It also means that those other countries can overfly any portion of the United States. Quotas were established, and currently the United States and Russia can overfly each other 42 times a year, while other countries such as England, Canada, France, and others have 12 overflights per year. Overflights are accomplished in special unarmed aircraft that may be equipped with panoramic and framing cameras for daylight photography, video cameras, infrared line scanning systems which can operate at night, and synthetic aperture radar that functions at any time in any weather. The implications of such overflights for a base such as Area 51 are obvious, and we believe the reason why much of the work done at the base is accomplished in large hangars or underground, below the surface and out of sight. The U-2, which I mentioned, is the purpose of opening the secret base and capable of reaching an altitude of 75,000 feet. And the Russians have observed nearly all the flights of the U-2. So Kelly Johnson went back to the drawing boards and developed another high-altitude aircraft known as Project Oxcart, which eventually became known as the SR-71 Blackbird, still one of my favorite airplanes. A long runway was needed at Area 51. In fact, a small town was built for the support personnel assigned there. Of the many altitude and speed records still held by the SR-71, one involved crossing 7 time zones in 3.5 hours, and another was a New York to London flight in 1 hour and 55 minutes. Now, when Kelly Johnson of Skunk Works was asked to build the Oxcart aircraft for the CIA, which later was renamed the SR-71, they require an aircraft that could fly at 3.5 times the speed of sound, that's a half mile per second, with a range of 4,100 miles at an altitude of 84 to 97,000 feet. Flying at a speed of 2,200 miles per hour, this airplane required 186 miles to make a U-turn. The SR-71 was originally designated as the RS-71 Blackbird by President Johnson, in a public speech, accidentally inverted the letters. And since the president is rarely corrected, the Air Force changed its letter designation to SR-71. The original letters RS stood for Reconnaissance Strike. The Pentagon originally termed the name Blackbird, black because it had developed it in the dark by the CIA, and bird because it could fly. The stealth F-117 began in 1973 and was referred to as Project Harvey because of the flat surfaces on the plane that reflect radar away from the source, such as the appearance of facets on a diamond. Lockheed named the project the Hopeless Diamond. It was renamed half blue when the prototypes began arriving at Area 51 in 1977 for testing. The American public and the rest of the world didn't find out about the stealth fighter until 1991 during the Gulf War, 18 years after the secret project began, with the possibility that it may have been used in Panama prior to that, without any or very little publicity. The stealth had been stationed at Holloman Air Force Base in southern New Mexico until it was taken out of service and replaced with the F-22 Raptor. Some of the other aircraft that have been test flown at Area 51 over the years include the A-10, the A-12, the B-1, and the B-2 bombers. And one of our newest is F-22 Raptor. Captured foreign aircraft such as the Russian MiG-21 and 23 are also flown there, giving us knowledge about other countries' technology and used in war games near the base in order to hone the skills of our own pilots. Daytime stealth is one of the projects we believe is currently being tested at the base, as well as many of the drones you're hearing about. If successful, it would make the surface of an aircraft appear invisible by taking on the appearance of the background sky. Other names of experimental aircraft we hear about having been or are being tested at Area 51 include the TR-3A, the Black Manta, the Pumpkin Seed, and the Aurora. That top picture is an artist's conception of what the Aurora might look like. And the bottom picture I took in Roswell back about 1998. I didn't get a picture of the aircraft because it was too high, but on the contrail is known as donuts on a rope, meaning you have a straight line contrail and every so often you have a circle. That's a pulsating propulsion system, which would be a new type propulsion system. The rumors have been rampant for some time that the base is or has moved, and that's simply not true. Having been there myself a few years ago, and one of my sources of information has recently informed me that a new water tank has been erected, a gigantic hangar is being built, and it appears as though additional runways have been added. Employees are moved around from base to base when their projects are completed, so the number of employees at the base varies from time to time, depending on what projects are being done there. Estimates of the size of the workforce vary from a low of about 1,500 to perhaps as high as 4,000. Starting with former President Bill Clinton in 1995, each year the President of the United States issues a presidential determination pertaining to classified information concerning the Air Force operating location near Groom Lake. Basically, that determination states that information concerning activities at Groom Lake have been properly determined to be classified, and disclosure would be harmful to national security. Continued protection of this information is therefore in the paramount interest of the United States. That's a presidential determination from the White House signed by George W. Bush, dated September 16, 2003. This was started by Bill Clinton. Another statement in the determination, and much more concern to me, is the fact that the President exempts the Air Force operating location near Groom Lake from any federal, state, interstate, or local provisions respecting control and abatement of solid waste disposal that would require the disclosure of classified information to any unauthorized person. This 2003 determination is the most current I've been able to locate. so we don't know if it has expired or no longer issued. As a taxpayer who has helped pay for the base over the years, I certainly would be disturbed if the base was shut down or moved, particularly after being lied to about its existence for many years. I do have mixed emotions about Area 51, however, as I look at it as a catch-22 situation. As a world leader, our country needs a location to test newly developed aircraft and other technology, because we certainly don't want our adversaries knowing what we're developing. But if some of the rumors about what takes place there are true, including rumors about alien craft or beings, I'd like to know it. I also think the base should be required to comply with all environmental policies imposed on other industries and explain why employees working at the base have died due to radiation exposure, as has been reported in recent years. Because the government's past record, I'm highly suspicious that they are hiding something other than just the development of new aircraft. I don't know if y'all have heard about it, but several years ago there were two gentlemen that worked at the base who died of radiation exposure. Their wives had no idea what they did at the base. They burned toxic waste above ground, the only place in the United States where that's permitted. Anyway, the two wives decided to sue the government. Took it to court. The judge is not allowed to look at the paperwork. And then he responded that you can't sue something that doesn't exist, implying that Area 51 isn't even there. I never did hear the results of what happened to those two women, but I would assume they were probably paid off, and that was the last we heard of them. But their husbands died of radiation exposure while working out at the base. The security in Area 51 continues to be some of the most stringent and enforced of anywhere in the world. Having myself been to the entrances of the base, I can assure you that being there is quite different than watching a documentary or seeing photos in a book about the security at Area 51. That's not security. I sometimes would like to add a comment to that picture of just why can't I go in there. The security personnel employed at the base by Wackenhut usually wear camouflage uniforms without markings and are affectionately known as camo dudes. It's believed that most of the guards are ex-Navy SEALs or Delta Force personnel. In addition to the white Grand Cherokees we have heard about camo dudes using for years, they are also now using newer Ford and Chevy pickup trucks. That's a Jeep on top, Chevy pickup on the bottom. An interesting thing on this, those are government license plates, and the first two digits are the year of the vehicle. You can't make it out on the photo, but the government plates have the year of the vehicle or the year of registration on the first two numbers of the license. That's kind of intimidating when you're standing there at the gate. You've got these guys up in a pickup truck with binoculars watching you. And notice there's no license plate in front of that new truck. That way you can't take a picture of it and find out who they are or where they come from. One of the guardhouses is located well within the boundary, a short distance past the warning signs and out of view from the signs. If you can see the guardhouse, you have gone too far. The consequences of being there will be obvious. The other guardhouse, which appears to be where all deliveries to the base go through, is very visible from the warning signs and, as I found out, very well staffed. Security devices are evident all around the entrance, including a camera mounted atop a tower, which follows any moves made by an intruder outside of the boundary. Now, when I was up there in 2006, I stood along this boundary here, and there is no fence around Area 51. It's just way too big to fence. There's a fence right here on each side of the gates, but they use a pole with a sphere on top of it, about every 50 yards or so. That's used for the F-16 and helicopter pilots to know where the boundary line is. That's a camera mounted on top of a pole. And when I was there, I was walking down along the boundary and that camera was following me. If I stopped, the camera was on me. I'd walk a little further, the camera was on me again. We did that about 3 times and I turned around, waved at the camera so the guards know that I know that they're watching me. But it's got to be a boring job for the guards to sit out there and wait for somebody to show up. But that's the way it was. Warning signs are posted at the entrances to the base which still say the use of deadly force is authorized in red lettering, and they mean what they say. The guards have the authority to shoot anyone crossing the boundary. Those are some of the signs that show the fines, penalties. Down the bottom of that white sign, right here, in red letters, the use of deadly force is authorized. People that don't understand that means they can shoot you. I've heard reports that if one were to cross over the boundary past the signs, he'd be immediately arrested, interrogated, turned over to the local law enforcement, and most likely be fined. They will probably also know your whereabouts for the rest of your life. The perimeter of the base is not fenced, but rather marked by posts with silver spheres on tops of the posts, which are used as a reference point by patrolling aircraft, which consists of black unmarked helicopters and F-16s that can be very intimidating at low level. There are remotely operated solar-powered surveillance cameras just inside the boundary at strategic locations, as well as motion sensors, microphones, and optical and vibration detectors. Ammonia detectors have also been mentioned, which can sense the difference between humans and animals by the amount of ammonia in their perspiration. Heat sensors are also used, which can detect body heat at night and during the day in cool weather. That's one of them posts with a sphere on top for marking the boundary. That's one of the cameras. Employees who work at the base sign an agreement to not discuss anything about the base, and should they talk, they give up their civil rights to a trial. May be faced up to 10 years in prison and up to $10,000 in fines. Security at the base is serious business for those who work there as well as those who attempt to violate that security. Now, I got something to share with you that I just found out about last week. I don't know how this happened, having been there myself, but in May of this year, while trying to sneak into Area 51, a 12-member British film crew was held by agents at gunpoint and forced to lie on the ground for 3 hours while the FBI checked their credentials. Apache helicopters were called in, and Washington phoned London after they were caught trespassing. The local sheriff was called in, and each person was questioned and given a fine of $600, in addition to being threatened that all would go to prison for 6 months. One of the group talked to a guard and he was told how they could make you disappear, and your body will never be found. He was also told the Apache helicopter had been monitoring them from 2 miles away, and over 20 guards had driven up from the base to deal with them, most of them with guns. The film equipment was taken, and when they got back to Las Vegas, they were followed everywhere they went that day by unmarked government vehicles. Now, it's my understanding of this that there was about 12 of them filming outside the gate where the guard shack is that you saw. And they claimed that they were there for about 30 minutes and didn't see any guards. When I was out there, and I'll talk about in a minute, we just got there and the guards were there. They think the guards were sitting in the guard shack eating dinner and watching a basketball game on TV. So anyway, they were outside the gate for 20, 30 minutes, making noise, And then one of them group went through the gate and knocked on the door of the guard shop. Immediately they came out with guns drawn, put them on the ground, and kept them on the ground for 3.5 hours. What they normally do, the military or the government normally doesn't handle this. They call the local sheriff. Sheriff comes out and he interrogated each one of them separately and then fined them $600 and threatened them with 6 months in prison. Somebody in Washington called London, England, and told them that their people had trespassed at Area 51, and out of the good nature of somebody in Washington, the prison sentence was not enforced. But I guarantee you, the United States government will know where those 12 people are for the rest of their lives. That got my attention because of having been there, knowing what the security is, but never having heard that it's possible that this could happen. This was fact. This happened. Nevada Highway 375 was renamed the Extraterrestrial Highway a few years ago by the governor of Nevada, and is a 98-mile stretch of highway, and 30 miles north of the southern end is where the town of Rachel is located. One of the few side roads intersects the highway heading off to the south toward the distant mountains where one of the entrances to the base is located. Now when I was up there, that's a 13-mile dirt road back to that mountain, and the guard shack is back behind that ridge. About 10 miles down that road, I told my wife, I said, start watching for trucks or jeeps up on the sand dunes. Sure enough, we came around the corner where the signs are, and there was a Chevy pickup sitting up on the sand dune, 2 guys, binoculars watching us. And by the time we got to that point, they already had my license number and probably knew where it was from, who my mother was, whatever. So there's no way that you're going to get around the security up there. The rancher's black mailbox was at the intersection until March 27, 1996, when it was replaced by a heavier-duty white mailbox. This may be the world's most photographed mailbox. It's a highly reverent landmark to many UFO enthusiasts who have had sightings of unusual objects in the distant sky while parked there. Until April 10, 1995, there was a pair of hilltop viewpoints in the jumbled hills that overlooked the portion of the base known as Whiteside Mountain and Freedom Ridge. The Air Force went before Congress and received permission to annex some 5,000 acres, including those 2 viewpoints, into the buffer zone of the base. This means that the area incorporated into Area 51 is now the size of the state of Connecticut, and the restricted airspace above the base encloses almost 1,000 square miles. Today, the only remaining viewpoints to see parts of the base into the Emigrant Valley are at Tickaboo Peak and Badger Mountain, some 25 to 27 miles from the base. Access is difficult in the winter, and viewing the base from there in the summer is nearly futile due to atmospheric distortion over that great a distance. The town of Rachel is located in the Sand Spring Valley, some 27 miles from the top-secret base control tower known as Greenland, and it's the closest town to the base. Rachel began as a mining town when the Union Carbide Company reopened a tungsten mine 8 miles to the northeast. Peak population of Rachel during the mining days was about 400 to 500 residents. When the mines closed in 1988, the workers moved, and today Rachel has a population of less than 100. Some who are retired, some who work on local farms and ranches, as well as the 4 businesses in town. A few in town work at Area 51 and at the Air Force Tonopah test range. But of course, those that do cannot talk about it. The businesses consist of a quick pick mini market, a gas station, small convenience store, and Rachel's most famous landmark, the Little Alien Inn. Pat and Joe Travis bought the inn in 1988. The former name of the motel, restaurant, and bar was the Rachel Bar and Grill. And prior to that was the watering hole and the little oasis. There's a public phone outside the inn, but you need a credit card to use it. Rachel, Nevada is at Ashes Area 51, is in a remote part of the state. Area 51 has several runways, one of which is 30,000 feet long, running from south-southeast to north-northwest, across the western portion of the dry lake bed and beyond in both directions. That's 6 miles of runway, indicating something is being landed at tremendous velocity to require that long a runway. Now, the 4 runways, of course, you have the long one, which is 30,000 feet. You have a shorter one here, and you have 2 that go across the dry lake bed. This 30,000-foot runway, I have no idea what they're bringing in that requires that long a runway. As an example, the space shuttle, when it lands, doesn't use any propulsion. It uses a braking system and a parachute. You can bring 2 space shuttles in from opposite directions there, and when they came to a stop, the shuttles would be over a mile apart. That's a long, long runway. The runway in Roswell is 13,000 feet, which is one of the longest in the United States. They needed that for the B-52s and the atomic bomb group. By the way, the first picture we got of Area 51, we got from a Russian satellite picture. We didn't even know it was there. But the Russians had a satellite picture of it, and that's how we basically found out that Area 51 existed. The hangars housing fuel and more storage tanks and other structures are mostly located south-southwest of the dry lake bed, near the slopes of the Papoose mountain range. It's believed that many of the buildings visible above ground are merely a cover for a large underground facility, as deep as 22 levels below ground. It's also alleged there's an extensive underground tunnel complex below the ground, with tunnels said to be 30 feet high and 70 feet wide, having chambers which act as underground hangars, and work areas that branch off from some of the tunnels. A new hangar has been constructed that will tower over anything else previously built at the base. This and other large hangars might act as a hiding place for massive aircraft carrier-type elevators that provide access to the extensive underground tunnel complex. Some of these hangars exceed 300 feet on each side, and a height of over 100 feet at the roof crest. Another complex of 4 hangars are known as the foreign technology hangars, where captured or defective enemy aircraft are disassembled, blueprinted, and reassembled to be flown against our newest design aircraft in mock combat. This provides us with their weaknesses and gives us a way to exploit the enemy in real battles. The Tonopah Test Range and Base in Area 51 is used several times a year for such projects as red flag and green flag exercises, where pilots train to improve their combat skills and help train ground support personnel. Normally, during these exercises, the aircraft do not enter the restricted Area 51 airspace. The Nevada test site is located southwest of Area 51 and covers 1,350 square miles, where nuclear testing above and below ground took place in 1951. Besides the nuclear testing done there, extremely toxic gaseous agents were also tested there. The employees that live in the surrounding towns and work at the base have been seen commuting in large white unmarked buses, while many commute daily or weekly from Las Vegas, Nevada's McCarran Airport. At the Las Vegas airport is a separate terminal in the northwest corner of the airport with high security for the employees to park their vehicles in a large fenced-off parking lot with 1,500 parking spaces. That has, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 737s at the bottom. Those are ex-America West airplanes that they bought and repainted. And you'll notice there's no writing on them. No identification except a tail number in the back. They're all painted the same with that red stripe. The top photo, you can see employees getting off the plane. They're not wearing uniforms, they're wearing civilian clothes. Many of these aircraft fly back and forth between McCarran Airport in Las Vegas and Area 51 on a daily basis. The bottom picture was taken during a holiday, so there are not many people parked there. But that's a completely separate terminal from the rest of the airport. These employees work what are referred to as Janet flights to Area 51. On any given day, the parking lot is usually 2/3 full. As many as 15 to 20 flights depart Las Vegas to Area 51 and or the Tonopah test range daily. Janet flights are a fleet of 6 white 737s and 5 smaller Beechcraft King executive jets. All the 737s are repainted white with a red stripe down the length of the plane. No name or logo shown on the planes, and the only identification is a number near the tail section. The planes are registered to the Department of the Air Force in Nevada. These Janet flights probably also shuttle workers between Groom Lake, Lockheed Skunk Works in Palmdale, California, and the Lawrence Liverpool Lab in the San Francisco area. Thus far in my presentation about Area 51, I've shared information about where the base is located, how it came into existence, and the security surrounding the base, some of what we know is done there. My interest in researching Area 51, of course, not only centers on what the American public as taxpayers are footing the bill for, but also the many things that we are not told about that continue to be speculation and rumors. Over the years, several researchers have speculated that the crash flying saucer from the 1947 Roswell incident, originally taken to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, may today be at Area 51 due to more stringent security there. The secret base was publicly brought to the forefront involving UFOs when Balthaser claimed to have worked there to back engineer a recovered UFO propulsion system in another area of the base known as S4 at Papoose Lake. No real evidence of this or his involvement has ever come to light, and Lazar has been seriously questioned about his claims, his education, and his credibility. Lazar is one of those types of individuals that I'd like to believe, but cannot without a significant more amount of verification about his claims. Credibility, verification, and validity remain as the cornerstones of serious UFO research. Papoose Lake, where Lazar supposedly worked, is located 9 miles south of the control tower at Area 51. There's also a dry lake bed that can only be reached by a few dirt routes from the Nevada test site and Area 51. S4 is rumored to be the location near the northeast corner of the dry lake bed, containing 9 camouflaged hangars dug into the side of the hill. The doors are not just ordinary hangar doors, but are painted with a sand texture to blend into the side of the hill and not viewable from aircraft or satellites above. These hangars are alleged to contain several different highly unconventional types of flying craft, which are described as UFOs, or flying saucers by those that have claimed to have been there. Bob Lazar claimed to have worked there in 1989, hired to help back engineer a recovered spacecraft involving the power and propulsion system of one of the recovered craft. Lazar claimed as many as 9 different craft were being housed in the hangars at S4, and that the particular craft he worked on was obviously made to be piloted by something smaller than the average human being. It's interesting to note here that our pilots who flew the F-117 stealth fighters also had maximum height restrictions due to the cramped space in the cockpit. We have not been able to verify Bob Lazar's claims, his educational background, or if he was ever employed at the base, and he and others have stated. One reason that UFOs could be or would be back engineered or possibly flown from the Papoose Lake location instead of Groom Lake could be the issue of deniability. Papoose Lake operations are possibly controlled from Area 51. And if anyone were able to obtain a clear, detailed photograph or videotape of these craft taking off, or landing or flying from Area 51, it would be absolutely impossible for any official from the base to deny knowledge of the nature of the objects. As long as the crafts are seen rising from behind the hills to the south of Area 51, officials at Area 51 would still be able to argue, it did take off from here, it's not ours, and we don't have any idea what it is or where it came from. John Lear, the son of Lear jet pioneer William Lear, has flown over 16,000 hours in more than 160 types of aircraft in over 50 countries. He holds 17 world speed records, and since the Vietnam War, has flown missions for the CIA and other government agencies. He has also flown experimental aircraft for the Navy and the Air Force. According to Lear, the flying saucer program known as Project Red Light began in earnest at Groom Lake in 1960. After attempting to fly one of the two recovered craft, there was a major accident and the testing operation shut down for a number of years. Testing resumed again in the early 1980s, according to Lear. Lear also commented that the underground facilities, such as reported 22 levels below ground at Area 51, and several underground at Papoose Lake, are common at other military installations as well. It's believed that the North Rock facility in California has 42 levels below ground, and the Lockheed facility goes down 300 feet. White Sands, New Mexico has 4 levels below ground we know about, and could possibly have 7. Lear and other researchers believe a network of tunnels connects several military bases in the United States. It's also known that other countries have underground facilities. I explained in my underground bases and tunnels research and lecture. I've done a lot of research on underground systems, and I'm convinced that most of the military bases, at least in the western United States, are interconnected with a tunnel system. This is required because of satellites. You have a satellite that can read a newspaper from 200 miles above the earth. There's no way they're going to do that work above ground. So most of the bases now have hangars, large hangars, or do their work underground. Derek Hennessy claims to have been a security guard at S4, and that he saw several flyable discs at lower levels which could have been elevated to the surface when desired. Part of the security requirement for entry to these lower levels includes plastic identification cards with magnetic information on them, handprints, and a right-eye retina scan in front of a camera. Another source that claimed to have been security at the base described 30 to 60 foot diameter craft. Bill Uhouse, a mechanical engineer, stated he worked on simulators at the base for copying engineering craft and then utilizing the own known avionics to be able to fly the craft, due to the difference in flying a disc versus a conventional aircraft. Can all these rumors and reports of secret bases, underground facilities, captured craft, and even alien bodies be true? Many others that have worked at the base at some time indicate that many of the rumors about Area 51 are based on factual information. And what are credible people seeing while viewing the base from public land when describing or videotaping erratic moving anomalies in the sky above Area 51 that appear and disappear, defying known physics in their movements? With the secrecy the base maintains, perhaps it will be many years before we know what actually transpired on or below the base. For those of you that thought our government can't keep secrets, I just presented a few examples of some of the secrets that have been kept, at least in Area 51. The base, with a land area the size of Connecticut, existed under the control of the CIA for some 25 to 30 years before anything public was acknowledged about its existence. Today, we're told that the base exists at Groom Lake, Nevada, but nothing else, and it continues to be exempt from environmental laws other industries have to comply with. Nothing is made public about Area 51 because of national security, a phrase too often used by our government to cover up what is really taking place. We found out about the stealth F-117 during the Gulf War in 1991, when in fact it had been test flown at Area 51 in 1977, with its development beginning in 1973, 18 years earlier. Other secretive projects are going on at the base, including radioactive projects, and as a taxpayer, we are helping to fund those projects. So I feel you and I have every right to be suspicious and should continue to seek whatever information we can about what is taking place at locations such as Area 51. In closing, remember the quote I like to use. Always telling the truth means never having to remember anything. Thank you. Hey, Noe, can you turn the lights on? Noe? Turn the lights, please. That's a lot of information to digest. Anybody got any questions? Yes, sir.
What do you think about Charles Hall and the tall white stories coming out of Packers Lake?
Paul White?
Claimed the Air Force was working with a group of aliens here.
I've heard the story. I don't know a lot of details about it. You might check with Stanton. I think he probably knows something about it. I've heard of it, yeah. In the back?
Apologies for being late to your talk. Do I understand on the flying saucer UFO that these could be both extraterrestrial and military aircraft developed?
I was wondering if UFOs could be extraterrestrial and ours.
Yes, sir.
I have always,
Sorry, we're going to stay behind.
I've always been under the impression that most things that people see in the western United States probably belongs to us because of the military bases we have out here in the western United States, the vast amount of space we have to fly things. That wouldn't hold true for the Roswell incident, of course, but 90% of what people see is explainable. Planets, aircraft, balloons, what have you. It's that 5 or 10% that's not explainable that we're interested in. So to answer your question, I wouldn't rule out the fact that it could be our own things. I think the stealth aircraft and the B-1 bomber, you look at them from a certain angle, they certainly look like a UFO coming at you. So I think there'd be some discussion about who it belongs to. Any other questions? Good. Stay around today. We got a good program for you. Who's next?
Next is the group from Laredo,
Okay.
Israel Prayer.
The group from Laredo who went out to Marfa Lights the last 2 nights and did some filming and some analysis, and they're going to have some new information to share about the Marfa Lights. Coming in right now with their equipment. Take a quick break.
He has a few announcements.
Oh, you're here? I didn't know you were here.
I left and went to Chicago. Thank you, Dennis, for that fantastic presentation. Very interesting. Super. Now, keep in mind that Dennis, along with our other speakers, will be available. They're going to have what they call a little town hall meeting at 1:15 right here, where we can just where you guys can interact with them, asking questions. So that's going to be done at 1:15. And anyone asking about the New Mexico Roswell incident and that type thing, all that will be available. Up next at 10:45, we have a group, Ismail Crayar, who is with the Laredo Paranormal Research Society. They just came in and they're going to be putting their stuff together, and they'll be kicking off at 10:45. Just want to make a few quick announcements before we break, and that is the group wants to thank Jerry Pippin of Conception Radio Network for streaming this conference online on the internet. Thank him very much for that. The next thing we want to do, we're going to have some of our guys covering up this window cover right here that's fell down, and I saw it bothering some of you, and certainly that's appropriate, but we're gonna get that done. So right now, we're gonna break until 10:45 and allow Isabel Cuellar and his group to get set up, and then we're gonna try to start right dead on time at 10:45. Anybody got any questions? Thank you. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
Charles Hall, please.